Hi everyone, in this video we will be going over lesson 39 for our 7th grade Elevate groups. This lesson does require a protractor, so if you do not have access to one in the classrooms you teach in, please do ask your school leaders or a math teacher in the building if they have one. The first part of this lesson is simply around understanding angles. So you are going to spend about 2 minutes talking them through how to understand angles, rays, vertexes, and endpoints, right? So the big idea here is that an angle is formed where two rays meet at a vertex. So here is ray 1, and here is ray 2. Both of these rays meet right here, which is called our vertex. Vertex A is the endpoint of each of those two rays. So then it tells us that the vertex of an angle A is at the center of this circle. And we know that a circle is 360 degrees. One of the rays lines up with 0, which is right here. The other ray lines up with the number that shows the angle's measure. So this is the other ray. Now you may launch students in a turn and talk to say, okay, well, where did that other ray line up? What number did that other ray line up with? And then students will have to see, okay, well, I see that the scale is skip counting by tens, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So it means that that other ray lines up with 60. So angle A is 60 degrees. Students are going to be seeing this symbol right here. Please make sure they do not confuse this with the less than sign, even though it looks like it, it is not. The symbol stands for the word angle. And so you would write this to say that angle A has a measure of 60 degrees. So then you can launch them into a 1-minute discussion in their table groups or with the turn and talk buddy. It says that the circle above is divided into 360 parts or 360 degrees. They are talking about this image right here. What fraction of the circle does an angle of 1 degree represent? So there are 360 parts altogether. And it says, what fraction of the circle does an angle of 1 degree represent? So that should be 1 over 360. The next part is you showing students how to draw and name their angles. So it says, draw two rays that share an endpoint or vertex. So here you have the two angles that students have to draw on their own. They can use this one as an example. And then it says, name the vertex, name the angle. So the vertex and the angle should have the same name. So if the vertex is W, the angle is W. You can tell students to use whatever letter you want, or you can have them use their own letter. The next part of the lesson shows students how to measure angles using protractors. So an angle is measured in degrees. We already saw that. So it tells you that when you are using a protractor, you need to line up the vertex of the angle with the center point of the protractor. So here is the protractor, and here is the center point of the protractor. You want to make sure that your angle is lined up with this point. One ray should always line up with 0. And then the other ray lines up with the angle of measure. In this case, the other ray ends up here. Now you can launch students into a turn and talk, and you can say, okay, well, how many degrees is represented by the second ray? Students will say, I don't know. There are 2 of them. Some students might say, no, the answer is 70. Other students might say, no, I disagree. The answer is 110. What you can ask students is, well, what type of angle is this? We know that there are 3 types of angles. There are acute angles, which are less than 90 degrees. Then there are right angles, which are 90 degrees. And then we have obtuse angles, which are larger than 90 degrees. Looking at this angle right here, is this angle an acute angle, a right angle, or an obtuse angle? Students should say that this is an acute angle. Okay, so if this is an acute angle, what do we know about acute angles? We know that they are less than 90 degrees. So in these 2 values, which one of them is less than 90 degrees? Well, 70 is less than 90 degrees. So that means that 70 is the angle's measure. And also because the 70 is on the same scale, on the same scale as the 0. So then you can have them write or discuss for about a minute, how are the 2 scales on a protractor different? Because they are always going to see those 2 different scales, and how they can identify which one to use. So then we'll have students find the measure of angle E, maybe with a partner. Again, lining up the angle with that center point. One ray is lined up with 0. Find the number on the scale that the other ray lines up with. Here is the other ray. Again, 2 values for each scale, 1 for each scale. Is it 40 or is it 140? Here we have an acute angle, which we know has to be less than 90 degrees. So when our options are 40 and 140, we have to go with 40. So here's another example. You can model this for them. You should model this question for them because this is on a scale of 360 again. So just show them how to use it. This time you are drawing an angle with a measure of 30 degrees. Students have already done an example where they are naming and drawing vertexes and angles, so they should not struggle with this piece. But then you push them into their independent practice for 2 minutes. Go ahead and draw and label the given angle of the circle. One of them needs to be 70. Make sure students are not only drawing the second ray at 70 degrees, but they're also labeling the vertex or the angle. And then here's the part of the lesson where the protractor is needed. So you will have to model this for them with the protractor. It says draw an angle of 125. I will go ahead and show you using a digital protractor. This is iExcel, but 125 is what it asked for. So what I can see is that my center point is right in the middle, and I am going to move this ray up until I get to 125. Which should be about there. Now someone will ask, why is it not here? Because this is an acute angle, which means that the value is at 65. If we want to make it an obtuse angle that is greater than 90, it has to be on this scale. Okay? So you will model for students how to use the protractor. They will draw the line. And then they're going to practice using the protractor to measure angles. The first question is given for them. They just have to figure out what the measure is. And then the second question requires them to use the protractor to measure how many degrees this angle is. And then questions 3 and 4 require them to draw an angle with 65 degrees and an angle with 118 degrees.